What you're getting when you're eating broccoli, you're getting flower buds. That's all that head is. And if you let it stay there for a long period of time, eventually every one of those little buds will open to a little yellow flower. In the spring months, I always leave a few of them to do that because the bees love them as well. But in the fall, you might as well harvest them. You're going to lop that top off. You're going to enjoy it or give it to someone who will enjoy it. But the plant is going to continue to grow. And it'll have little side heads that come out. It'll be, nice little small broccoli, little trees as somebody once called them, and they're delicious. You whack those things off and eat them, and it puts out even more heads, which just are kind of ever decreasing in size, but they still taste absolutely wonderful. And broccoli will continue to produce over quite a long period of time. Now, compare that to cauliflower, which I guess we'll talk about. Oh, let me tell you one more thing about broccoli first. Invariably, you're not going to spray like you probably should, and you may end up with a few little green worms. And some people, let's say, are a little squeamish, and they don't like finding little worms in their broccoli, whether it's in a fresh salad or, after you've steamed it or whatever. The way that you prevent problems, fill your sink with water and put some salt in it. Just get a sink full of salty water, dunk your head of broccoli in there for 5 minutes or so. If there are any little green cabbage worms in there, they will come floating out. They can't stand the salt water. So if you want to be absolutely 100% sure that there are no little green worms in your broccoli, soak that head in salt water for a little while first.
And don't tell your guests, right?
And don't tell your guests. That's right. That's right. They prevent that with the ones that go in the grocery store because it's loaded with all sorts of toxic chemicals. But they don't want to tell you that either. But it's really true. Growing cauliflower is slightly different. Cauliflower, the plants grow very much like broccoli. They have the same little green cabbage worms that get on them. And they don't get quite as tall. I mean, if you see them side by side, the cauliflower will have a little bit more of a gray-green leaf as opposed to a dark green leaf. And then the cauliflower head starts to form right down in the center of all those leaves. It's white, and like us light-skinned people, it is very susceptible to sunburn. So if you want to have pretty cauliflower, you've got to keep the sun off of it, or it'll turn brown. I mean, it still tastes good, but it is not very pretty at all. So how do you keep your cauliflower from sunburning? It's got these big, gorgeous green leaves. And as soon as you see those little cauliflower heads start to form, you take some of those leaves, you pull them up over the top, put a rubber band, put a string, put something around them, but you literally tie the leaves up over the developing head of cauliflower. That will keep it pure white, and it will be absolutely gorgeous. You'll grow, my heads of cauliflower were about this size last year. Again, cauliflower grows extremely easily, but if you don't pull those leaves up over the top to shade it, it only takes 1 day. It will brown out on you and it will not be nearly as pretty. So, just a word of warning about growing cauliflower. Cabbage, again, cabbage is one thing that is so cheap in the grocery stores, I don't usually bother to grow it unless I've got a lot of extra room and a lot of extra time. But if you want to grow good cabbage, if you love making sauerkraut, if you just like the pleasure of doing it yourself and you want to know that it's clean and pesticide-free, grow it exactly the same way you do the broccoli. But cabbage and cauliflower both, once you've cut that head off, the plant's not going to do anything else as far as giving you production. It'll sit there, it'll stay green, may even grow a little bit more. But you're not going to get any little heads of cauliflower to the side or anything else. Once you have harvested the big head on cabbage or cauliflower, either one, it's time to pull the plants up and get ready for whatever's going to go in there next. And right now is the time to plant broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and Brussels sprouts. And again, however much you think you're going to enjoy, plant about twice that much because you'll find you have lots of other people who will be happy to share it with you. Now, the one other thing that I will tell you may get after your young plants. Come on in, sir, if you like. There's spots up here, not a problem. There's a creature that most of us have running around that I call them bushy-tailed tree rats. Some people call them squirrels. And you'll find that they can be quite fond of little plants. And so if you've got a lot of squirrels around, try to do something to keep them out of your garden. You can spread blood meal, which is pretty good repellent. There's some other repellents out there you can use. You know, 22 works very well if you live out in the country, but or a pellet gun, that's even quieter if you live in town. But anyway, squirrels can be a problem, as can rats and mice. So if those are a concern, take some steps to keep them out of your garden. You may go out and put out 48 plants, and squirrels will come in and eat 40 of them the first night. How do I know? Yeah, don't ask. Any questions about broccoli or cauliflower? Yes, ma'am.
No, this is about not squirrels, but I have skunks and armadillos, and they don't eat my garden, but they dig little funny holes everywhere.
Looking for insects.
How do I do
blood meal? Blood meal is usually a repellent.
Okay.
I think they smell Aunt Mary in that blood meal or something like that, and they're afraid they're going to become part of the same stuff. It's good fertilizer. It's high nitrogen, and it is usually repellent to those two creatures. Now, armadillos, you know, those things you almost have to trap them and release them, because sooner or later they're going to get in. Armadillos are, well, let's just say they're not at the top of the intellectual scoreboard. You can't put bait in a trap for armadillos because they're eating earthworms and things like that. You can't very well use earthworms to bait a live trap. But you can use their own stupidity against them in that if you've ever watched, if there's, say, a board, a 2x4 standing on edge, and an armadillo walks up to it and bumps his nose into it, it will never go over it. It will turn and just walk down, you know, along that board until it comes to the end, and it will go around it. So if I have a problem with armadillos in the yard, which I do occasionally, I'll normally set my live trap right at the edge of the fence, and I'll take a board and angle it out so that it's just this big funnel that goes into it. Or if I put the trap out in the middle of the yard, I'll take two 2x4s and stand them up on edge, and it's just this big funnel. Armadillo comes walking along, and he turns into that board, and he'll just walk right along that board until he walks into the trap and trips it. So that's the way that you trap armadillos. But use a strong trap. Unless you've ever fooled with these things, you will just be amazed at how strong those claws are. If you've ever watched them dig, they can dig a big hole in a hurry, and they'll tear up a real lightweight trap. But you know, good live trap's a good way to relocate them. I don't have many enemies in the world, but I'll give you a couple of addresses if you want to drop them off somewhere. That, like the road crew that's working on the street out here. Oh man, somebody.
Somebody be a third world country doing that road out there for you.
Well, somebody told me that the sun is supposed to burn out in 500,000 years, so they'll probably have to finish this project in the dark. Don't get me started on that. Yes, ma'am.
Would you just put the blood meal all the way around your garden or broadcast it all the way?
I broadcast it through it. Again, think of it as putting fertilizer out.
Okay.
How often do you have to do it?
After a really hard rain, you're probably going to have to reapply it. So every 2 or 3 years. The way it's going lately. Yes, ma'am.
I had this problem all summer because my garden was newly planted. And every morning I would come out. My plants would be displaced 5 feet over, just dug up, roots and everything. Well, I started using the blood meal and it did work, but I would find that I'd have to use it probably more than I should. So my question is, how much can I use it?
You can use blood meal as much as you can afford to use it.
Okay.
Again, it's an organic fertilizer. It's dried slaughterhouse blood is what it is.
Yeah.
It's high in nitrogen. You'd have trouble finding a better fertilizer. But it could lead to $10 a pound broccoli if you happen to overdo it. I think it'd be worth it. But you're never going to overdo as far as the plants go on the blood meal.
That's what I was concerned about.
Did you ever figure out what was doing the digging?
Well, they think my neighbors think it's armadillos.
You get to the point where it's almost worth putting up a fence. And it doesn't, again, with an armadillo, if that's what's doing it, the fence only has to be this tall to keep them out. So it's not like...
Well, this is my front yard. That's the problem. And I live behind a green belt, and my neighbor does not have a fence. So I talked him into using like a lattice work border that he kind of puts up temporarily. But then the mornings that I've had really the biggest problems, I'd come out and that lattice was totally flat.
You know, the other option is to go to a farm and ranch store and get a little fence structure, a little electric fence. Just stretch that wire around about this high off the ground, and it will stop just about anything, including the mailman if he steps on it. And, I love one of Will Rogers' many quotes. He said, what did he say? I think he said, 10% of the people know by intuition, 20% learn by observation, the other 70% have to pee on the electric fence and find out for themselves.